She promises that they won't do it without the support from these clans.
And whenever a colonizing state has offered a deal in history, it's gone well, right?
Always.
Always. Always. Louisiana Purchase, baby.
Welcome to the Casuals of Runeterra podcast, episode 177. I'm your host, Ryan, here with the other host, Hetch.
What is up, everybody? And this is going to be a fun return to our usual content, which kind of feels weird right now.
Yeah, if you're returning to us after the Welcome to Noxus three-parter we did, welcome back. It'll still be related content, but this is a numbered episode, so it's going back to main champion stories and or bios. And today we're talking about Alistar, as we've been inspired from those episodes. There's a comic that does involve him, and this gives you a little more information on him being in that arena and at what point in his life that is occurring, as it overlaps with Mel's life, right? Which that's a little cool bit. But before we do that, and before I give Hetch a word, we're going to go into housekeeping here, as we always do.
That was going to be my word, that I was going to take us to housekeeping because I could hear you going.
Yeah, you can listen to us everywhere. Visit us at podcastcore.com for all of our info. That's podcastcor.com. Email us at the same name, but at gmail.com. And follow us on all the platforms. That helps with discoverability. We appreciate it. And then leave a like and comment wherever you listen the most, or everywhere if you have the time. Once again, thank you. But as always, word of mouth has gotten us to this point for the 5 years we've been doing this. So tell a friend to break the chains of oppression by listening to the Casuals of Runeterra podcast. Etch.
I'll remember how to work my computer one day.
I feel like every time I mention the amount of time we've been doing this, one of us fucks up.
That's a sign of a veteran right there, baby. Yeah, but like you're saying to take off the chains of oppression. And if you listen to our Welcome to Noxus little segments, we did talk about Alistar in a gladiatory setting. Like, this is gonna be a happy story, right?
Sort of. We'll see. We'll see. So up top, story best told in 3 parts. Before we get there, this story is by someone we know well, Laurie Goulding. But alongside Rachel Harrison, which I couldn't find a page for Rachel, but she is credited, so I want to throw that in there. Probably did some touch-ups, helped with some editing, who knows. But want to make sure the credit is given where credit is due. But this is one of the simpler stories, simple, straightforward stories from Goulding. It's easy to follow. We get from point A to point B pretty quickly, but it is important, especially because Alistar, Alistar is an OG character, been around forever. And what this story does for that character is very similar to like what I talk about with the Runation book. Go listen to book club episodes if you want to. Does for Callista. It takes a character that you're used to seeing in game that doesn't really have much in-game personality and adds a lot to them, to where after I read this story and we did the notes and got ready for this episode, I was like reminiscing about Alistar. I was like, dude, this is a cool character, and his place in the overarching story that we have in the world of Arcane could be a big deal.
Yeah, and unlike some of the other like long-standing characters that we've covered on our show before, my favorite example was Lee Sin. As far as like the characters who have done a bit of your retconning, that Lee Sin's bio before his retcon actually had like a decent amount of meat to it, right? Like it was weirdly grimdark for League of Legends, but there
Yeah.
was some substance there. Alistar's original lore did not have like anything, so it's really nice to see not only like the get character like Alistar getting some love, but it's really refreshing to see that th- we have someone of such high caliber working on
Yep.
this, because we haven't really covered a Laurie story that we didn't like.
Yeah, I mean, he's grown on us. We have the big three that we always reference, but he's up he's up there now as someone who seems pivotal to the success of the world building of League of Legends.
Absolutely.
He's our number 4. Give him a book. Let him do a book, damn it. All right. Part 1 of this story, and it's Alistar's bio. We're going with the name Broken Chains. So we start with there essentially being many places that in Noxus history have resisted the request to assimilate, and the longest resisting force of clans are from the Great Barrier Mountains, which are south of Noxus if you look at the map. And this clan of Minotaurs have protected the trade routes to the ancient city of Zon for centuries.
And it as far as with having the location, because yes, it is south of, as far as like from Noxus
Yes, from
proper, like
Noxus,
the
yeah.
Immortal Bastion,
Mhm.
but it's also interesting because this is very close to a lot of other Noxian territories
Mhm.
that are very well known as far as to the Noxians, because this is the same mountain range that the city of Basilich is in,
Yep.
which is where Draven and Darius are from.
Yeah.
They might hold some important positions within Noxus. Maybe.
Yeah, some geography here. So the weird thing about Noxus is because it's so far north, because we often talk about how close Noxus is to Shurima. You gotta remember, Shurima is a massive desert. It touches a lot of water, right? But also, when you look at Noxus proper on the map, essentially draw a straight line down. That's all Noxus, right? So when we say it touches Shurima across the river, or across the body of water, it literally does because of how spread out Noxus is, right? This isn't like
Yeah.
a Demacia situation. When you look at Demacia, that area is Demacia.
Yeah, I would think of it more of like the Roman Empire,
Yep.
because the Roman Empire like touched Egypt,
Mhm.
right? But it's separated by the Mediterranean
Mhm.
Sea, right? And it's very similar kind of geography in that sense, because Shurima's massive,
Yep.
massive land structure, but it's also like essentially a separate continent. It
Yep.
would be like looking at Europe to Africa.
I really hope they don't change the map because
We would be so screwed.
So much of our content has been around the geography, but we digress. We'll get back into that in the general discussion section. So Alistar is the like noble warrior that's respected by all of these Minotaur clans, and outsiders actually view Minotaurs as just beast, right? And this kind of makes relations difficult with other mortals. But Alistar is one of the clan members who's always urging them to forge greater bonds with these other mortal races, despite their disgust or their views on Minotaurs.
It's really interesting to me that they don't already have like a decent relationship with other mortal races,
Yeah.
because I understand why you don't have a good relationship with Noxus, right? Like you're not
Yeah.
going to be happy with people who are like trying to take over your home. But with their position, and it's even stated, they protect the trade routes to Zon. So you still have to talk to these people, right? Like they're walking through your lands over and over again.
Yeah.
So this was an interesting point, that it's like that Alistar is basically the only one who's like, we need to form a better relationship. And the mortals are like, nah, screw those guys.
Yeah, and there's some irony, but stick with us here. So one day, the matriarch of House Twain arrives as an emissary, and she mentions there would be an attempt to take the eastern coastal city of Basilich, which Hetch mentioned, and she promises that they won't do it without the support from these clans.
And whenever a colonizing state has offered a deal in history, it's it's gone well, right?
Always.
Always. Always. Louisiana Purchase, baby.
So many of the Minotaurs want to accept this offer, right? It sounds too good to be true, and they're ready to take it. And Alistar is the only one who's really skeptical, since he's known other Noxian scouts before, and they can't always be trusted on their word. So he travels with 50 of his greatest warriors to in person decline the alliance. And he tells them that the other clans can do what they wish, but I do not accept the distant rule of some grand general, quote unquote. And he's referencing Borum Darkwill at this point. And the moment he makes that position clear, all the other clans that already pledged themselves turn on Alistar and his warriors. And that's where part one ends.
And if anyone is getting a really good sense of like William Wallace and now just shouting freedom, you would be right. Like, this is very much like the tale of William Wallace, of just being betrayed by the other nobles who'd rather bend the knee to the English, right? But in this case, it's a bunch of Minotaurs bending the hoof to Orm Darkwill. And
I'll never bend the hoof.
that needs to be a voice line.
So part two begins with this quick battle ending with Alistar killing Lady Twain himself with his bare hands. And his remaining warriors and he are then placed in chains and taken to the capital of Noxus and charged with inciting rebellion. So now we know where they are on the map in the main place you see, right? In the capital city. And they're also, at this time frame, placed in the Reckoning arenas as part of this festival for gladiatorial combat known as the Fleshing. What a name. That is disgusting.
That is a crazy name. Like, that's
like it's on the box, pretty much, right? It's on the back of the box. There's no hiding what this is.
Nah, there's no way that you can like try to spin this. Well, like, how do you spin the fleshing? That'd be like saying the purge is about like anything other than the purge, right?
So Alistar wants to refuse the chanting spectators what they came for, right? And recommends that his fellow soldiers do the same and not fight for their entertainment, right? Rob them of that with the last bit of dignity that they have. 21 days pass, and he's the last remaining person of his tribe. And despite this, he is still despised by the crowd. I mean, he's performed well, obviously, to be the last remaining one, but he hasn't won them back because he doesn't want to. And he's constantly put into fights more than others against Reckoners over and over again. And at this point, he's killed so many people that he begins to forget who he was and what he came from.
Yeah, that's one of those things where it's like you have the old wise tale of saying that if you're treated like a beast long enough, you will become a beast.
Yeah.
And it doesn't help that we know from earlier in his bio that Minotaurs were already kind of viewed as beasts. So now it's just getting hammered home to where Alistar starts to believe in himself.
Yeah. And during this time, he meets a servant girl in the arena named Aelia. And he behaves like a rabid beast when she comes around, expecting her to fear him and taunt him like the others, but she never does that. She treats him kindly with respect, and soon Alistar does the same, where he actually begins to speak back to her because he can do that. And that's where part two ends.
I'm glad that part two ends with a little bit of humanity. It would suck if part two was just the fleshing.
So part three picks up with Aelia, who is also from a conquered Noxian territory, and she sees Alistar suffering day after day, and this convinces her that they should leave the city together. And she mentions this to him. She tells him her plan, and for the first time in a long time, this gives Alistar hope because there's no one like him around anymore.
And it's also important that he has hope because this you have to have hope to be able to not treat yourself as a beast. Like without this hope, he is just going to stay where he is, killing reckoner after reckoner until he dies.
Yeah. Yeah, essentially. So one day she brings Alistair the key to his cell, and he swears at that moment to repay her for her sacrifice to get to this point. They rush to the river to board a cargo ship, but are attacked by Noxian agents, and Alistar immediately switches into battle mode, but unfortunately, he fully focuses on his rage. And I want to make a reference here to our more recent episodes on Warwick, because there's a parallel here that we'll talk about in the general section.
Yeah, and this him focusing on his rage, like there's definitely a lot of building up to it, right? Because this is after a month of just day in, day out fight for your life.
Yeah.
And the only thing that sustained him through that month was his rage. He doesn't have the same things that he was fighting for anymore. So all that he had to fight for was his rage. And unfortunately, that means he has no idea what the hell happened.
Yeah, he sees red, and Aaliyah is calling out to him during this time frame, but he can't hear her. And then once he's killed his attackers, returns to his senses, the boat's gone, and Aaliyah's gone, and he doesn't know if she was captured, if she was killed, or if she was on the boat. So he decides to flee south instead and starts searching for her everywhere he's going.
Man, it would it feels so bad because it's like, oh, you don't know what happened to her, but then as a reader, it's like, I know what Warwick did.
Yeah.
I got a good idea of what Alistar did too.
Yeah, it's rough, but weeks pass in this time frame. Something important happens. A coup happens in Noxus, and quickly his escape is the last thing on anyone's mind.
Hey, well, like we may have talked about Borum Darkwill's soul at length, so we'll just you know what happened by now.
Yeah, pick a Noxus episode. Just pick one, roll dice. So we wrap up part 3 in the story here with Alistair now just traveling alone, doing his best to hide his identity because he's a massive fucking purple minotaur. And he goes to Noxus territories one after the other, encouraging resistance while he's there and also fighting in these resistances alongside the marginalized people. And he has a vow to clear the shame from his heart with good deeds before he can ever return to the mountains, leaving his rage behind. And no matter where he goes, he makes sure he always looks for Aaliyah.
And that's where our story leaves off with Alistar basically kind of turning himself into Cassian Andor now.
Yeah.
And just like, yeah, I'm part of the resistance.
I have nothing to return to.
I will go to where the resistance needs me, and I will build the resistance wherever I go. And I will say that, like, I love getting a lot more meat and bones to Alistar's story, but one of the things that I wish that we got here was like, we don't know what happened to the other Minotaurs.
Yeah.
And they clearly were not looked upon well. And I doubt they were looked upon any better after, like we have like the distance between like the mountains and the Immortal Bastion.
Yeah.
So with that distance, I doubt the impression of Minotaurs got better after watching Alistar absolutely destroy people for a solid month and then go on a killing spree on his way out.
Yeah, because at this point, and this is where we can talk a bit about the crossover and the future of Alistar, someone we didn't even think of to be a big player, but could be if Riot decides to do so. But let's start with that, right? Where when you look at the time frame and the overlap, if you listen to the episode where we went over the comic about Mel reminiscing about the first time she went to see a gladiatorial combat and who was there, Alistar. And this was the peak of that form of entertainment, right? Because when we get the Triferics, things are a lot more buttoned up, right? You still have arenas, but this was the point where Borum used this to distract the masses, right? And, warriorhood was such a big deal. So he was clobbering time, essentially, at like the peak. He was in the prime of the sport, if you want to call it that. So what Hetch mentioned makes sense is that he was already well known in his clan, but now as far as a beacon in gladiatorial combat, he's also well known, which makes it hard to keep, under wraps as you're forming or helping form these resistance as you're traveling throughout this Noxian territory. So that creates a cool dynamic, right?
Yeah, it's a very cool dynamic, but it's also a dynamic that could go in either direction,
Yeah.
which is one of the reasons that it's cool, right? Because you can play it off to where it's like the resistance is going to be built stronger than what people could have done on their own because of the pull power that Alistar's name has now.
Yeah.
Because it's like, hey, he fought his way out from the Reckoners and he's alive.
Mhm.
If he can do it, we can do it. But the other direction you could go in is like, oh, well, that Minotaur got away. All right, tell all the people of Noxus that Minotaurs are just violent killing machines,
Mhm.
and here's the video evidence of them being violent killing machines. And then xenophobia takes over. Like, there's a lot of directions that you can go
Oh,
in,
dude.
right?
Yeah, and that's the part that makes it so cool is because, like you said, when you have a large portion of the Minotaur population chose to take the deal, and then Borum Darkwill's overthrown, and that changes that relationship. What the reputation has done to Minotaurs, with Alistar being the prominent one, right? Um, and him not really being that person, you create a situation where you can have some subplots with him encountering other Minotaurs out in the wild that did pay fealty. And did they keep that fealty? Was it to Borm Darkwill, or was it to Noxus as a nation? Or how were they treated afterwards? It didn't pay off. So what did they decide to do? Are there Minotaurs that join the resistance because they see Alistar? Or do they decide that, no, I've picked my lane and now I'm going to stop him? Or there could be people with delusions of grandeur, right? Who wanted to be the Alistar of the clans, never got that opportunity, but now have the backing of the Noxus army and their intent, right? As he's on the opposite side of it. There's so many ways, like you said, you can play this. And you made the perfect analogy to Cassian Andor. But within universe, we do have a direct analogy and a direct parallel, which is Vander. Vander and the Warwick story we get in Arcane. Because Vander was a resistance leader.
Yep.
Vander did do a lot to allow the story we were able to get, right? To allow the resistance to build to the point that it was, ultimately having to sacrifice himself. He never got to leave that rage behind. And I think that's some foreshadowing here, where if they do want to make, resistance fighter Alistar a thing as part of this story, because of his connection, his loose connection to Mel, right? And then what we got in the comic as well, we see that there's efforts being made there to keep him included. They could be, hey, remember when we hurt you last time? Well, the cycle never ends. But ultimately, for progress, sacrifices have to be made. Here's resistance fighter Alistar, and he may never get to return to that mountain, right?
How dare you joke about them the way they hurt us and then opening that door again?
Because it's good
Now,
storytelling.
it is good storytelling. It is good story. Now, one of the things that I am interested in seeing is how much of the timeline that they're going to hold to, like with
Mhm.
this comic,
Yeah.
or well, with the comic combined with Alistar's bio.
Mhm.
All right, because we know in the comic that Mel, as a child, got to watch
Yep.
Alistar during the fleshing. Fleshing, Jesus. Um, but so she got to see Alistar in action as a child,
Yeah.
which means that now we have a time frame of Borm Darkwill in relation
Mhm.
to Arcane. So some of the theories that we had as far as like what directions the story could go in, like they already kind of curbed a little bit with that. But how much are we going to stay w- um true to Alistar's bio?
Mhm.
Because Alistar's bio is he escapes like the same week that Born Darkwill falls.
Yeah.
All right. Are we going to see any Borum Darkwill stuff in Arcane? I personally don't think so, but also like what resistance sides are we going to see in the show then?
Mhm.
So it would be interesting to see as far as like how true to that timeline they're going to keep, because it would be awesome to see the arcane animators put Alistar in the fucking arena. That would be sick. But the time frame doesn't match up anymore because we know, like with the bio that in the comic, that it's like that happened
Yeah.
when Mel was a kid. This is Mel's return to Noxus.
Mhm.
So it's like how true or like will they stay to that? I don't know,
So
but it would be an interesting line as far as like bringing Alistar into the front of the show. Well, not the front,
yeah.
but like still into like the part of the major cast and major story plot.
Yeah, it could be because you get to use an Alistar post sins, right? An Alistar is still trying to redeem himself and no longer being tied to his gladiatorial days, right? Because that's kind of the downfall. That's how he got there. And you can reveal that not even through, you don't have to do flashbacks like raw flashbacks. Alistar's backstory, as he encounters Mel in the current time frame, can be one of her gaining memory, right? Like her remembering some things of like, because obviously she pushed away while she was in Piltover, she tried to fill herself with experiences to overwhelm her upbringing, right? So it could be something that she's like, I know, like I have a feeling I know you, but for Alistar, all that is a blur. You're just another person throwing tomatoes at me, throwing stones at me, as far as I'm concerned. He didn't know she had compassion for what he was doing in there, right? Secretly.
Yeah.
But I think through the interactions in the current time frame, we can reveal to Mel that, oh, I remember you. And also you can have that help to express the progress of the resistance while Mel was gone. Because while Mel's in Piltover, Alistar is helping to create a situation that Mel can capitalize when she returns.
Yeah, another potential angle
Mhm.
here could be like this is also like Mel's like connection back into Noxus, right?
Yep.
Because yeah, she's going back as far as like a Medarda, but she also killed her mom.
Yeah.
Like the wrong people hear about that, she could be just absolutely screwed. So, but the resistance they could probably help as far as like, yeah, we'll get you in without people asking too many prying questions, right?
And this is the part where I don't want to. We're gonna date ourselves here, and I don't want to do any spoilers. There's a movie that recently came out called One Battle After Another. It's a great movie. Go see it. If you have seen it, there's an overarching theme that doesn't really spoil anything. That essentially is the title. That means one resistance is the same as another resistance, and I'll leave that there. And if you've seen the movie, you can apply what I'm getting to here, which is Mel just left a revolution to come here during another one. And the thing about resistance is if you've experienced it before, solidarity comes easy when you find it elsewhere. So
Yeah.
that could be an angle, especially with this film coming out when it came out. I don't know how deep they are into Welcome to Noxus, but I hope the creators have seen the film and are like, wait a minute, there's something we can do here that's pretty cool. Because that's what's being praised about the messaging of that film is how well it integrates all the oppression that takes place in different environments in that movie, but still bring it back to the main character and how seamlessly he's able to weave in and out of these different situations without losing a step. Because we're, what is it? Injustice anywhere is injustice everywhere. It's that, right? So yeah,
Yeah.
that could be a thing. And I hope they take it because it would be equivalent to what they did with Callista for me. Is like no one expects Alistar. There's no person right now doing predictions that's not us that expects him to turn up as a main character and a resistance
Yeah.
leader in this story.
I mean, we didn't even start talking about
Yeah.
Alistar until we just finished our
Yeah.
Welcome to Noxus comic section. And we're like, oh shit, that's Alistar.
Yeah.
We should do an Alistar episode.
He's an OG. He's loved. He's a support character. It makes sense.
It makes sense. And when we're looking at like a lot of the big Noxian characters,
Mhm.
you don't have anyone in Noxus that you could put as your quote unquote good guy, right?
Yeah.
Like, I mean, the closest we get is Darius, and Darius isn't a good guy. He's just a good soldier.
Yeah.
Like a soldier's not a leader, and any sense, right? And he's only good at leading other soldiers because he knows what a soldier wants.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, he fully believes in the Noxian message. Like, and especially these days, imperialism is not really looked upon like with
Thank
looked
goodness.
upon in a good light.
Thank goodness.
So
We'll take
who's
it.
going to be your good guy? And so Alistar's kind of in a great spot right now to kind of pop back up. And I'm upset that we didn't think about it until we saw the fucking comic. But we made it. We got there.
We got there. But yeah, let's leave it there. Hey, any listeners, if you have some pull, if you know someone on the team, go ahead and send this episode over. Like, hey, these guys, they might be onto something. Or in the comments, let us know if we're crazy. Let us know if we're so off base and we're full of ourselves and we don't know what we're talking about.
Oh yeah. Go ahead, light us up because
Bring us back to earth.
We're having so much fun with the theory that we probably either in over our heads or we're on to something, right? It's one or the other.
That's what I'm talking about. Pass the dope. All right. So with that, as always, thanks for listening, and we'll be back soon with the next episode. Who knows where we'll go?
Who knows? All right. Take care, everybody.